Well, good evening, folks. Brian Salter here with Salter Racing Engines, and I thought I'd have a little sit-down talk with you. David Vizard called me last night, and man, we talked forever. Over 2 hours, and just gave me an update on his well-being and that kind of thing. And, you know, if you guys are religious at all, keep David in your prayers, and actually me too, and of course the people that are affected by the hurricane. So I'd promised you that I would show you some hurricane pictures where it just destroyed momentarily, put a damper on things with the business, and I lost thousands of dollars, and I had to take a break. So what I mean by that is when all that happened, when that hurricane came through, the roof caved in. It rained 38 inches of water. And growing up around those things, we've had to go back to our home in a boat before and shovel mud out of the floor. So it's been a part of our life going back to my ancestors. My ancestors were original settlers here on the Outer Banks, and so we've been here all our life and been through a lot of storms, a whole lot of storms. Rebuilt homes multiple times at this point. So when it came through, the problem with hurricanes is if they set there and don't move, and then the tides change, they come up and down. We'll get a 9-10 foot storm surge that 9 or 10 foot high water levels over above and beyond the regular high tide is just, you just flood the whole place. So plus 120 mile an hour winds with gusts on top of that, it just destroys everything. So on top of that, the 38 inches of rain, the type of roof that was on the building was a rubber mat. So of course it had high side, so it acted like a swimming pool. And the water level just rose and rose and rose until it just caved in. The whole wall caved in, the roof caved in, and I lost probably about 30,000 or more in some of my really my best cylinder heads, Bryant crankshafts. I don't know, 25, 30, $400 comp roller cams, 25 or 30 of those, and tons of tools. I had a really nice precision surface grinder that's ruined. I told you guys I was a tool and die, certified tool and die maker, machinist, and I also have master's machining and a degree. And a lot of my setup tools, my little blocks that were precision ground to within 50 millionths, all that stuff's rusted, gone, ruined. So yeah, it took a dent, knocked a big dent in my drive. I'll say that, and I just had to take a break. And I'm going to explain all that. I'll show you some photos. But so Dave and I were talking last night, and we talked about the cam challenge, and we talked about his comment that he made in his video where he says, "I'm going to be a winner either way." And I don't know how many of you will ever get to talk to David Vizard, but he's, I don't know, man. I love talking to David. He's got so many stories. He did give me permission to tell this story. One time he was in a race, and he raced the 1.6 liters, and I guess on these types of races they'll run multiple classes on a track, and his goal was to beat this 3-liter factory team. So they had twice the engine he had, size as far as cubic inches, and David was in front of this guy and was coming up on the last lap. And a year prior to that, during the race, the exhaust pipe had gotten bent up during the race and tried to set his paint. The exhaust pipe was blowing into the fender and started burning the paint, and the car filled with smoke. And because of that, the track's like, you got to have fire extinguisher, like a halon type system in the car. And so that happened a year prior. And so they installed that system, and the following year, David said that this guy was on the last lap, was right up on his bumper, probably just inches away. And he said he pulled the fire extinguisher. And if you guys know anything about that type of particular gas, just a few parts per million takes oxygen away. And you can actually pop off a little bit of that gas in a dyno room, and it will cause the engine to stumble. So David pulls the fire extinguisher, and it wasn't like white powder. It was a gas. It completely moves oxygen out of the way. And it got pulled up in this guy's engine just enough to make the engine kind of cough a little bit and put about 50 feet between him and David, and that's how he beat the guy. And it's just crazy stories. But so we got to talk about David's camshaft, and I do know exactly what he turned in. And I have to say, it's probably going to be really good. It's probably going to be really good. So we talked about my cam, and we talked about our thoughts. And again, you know, my experience, I have learned a lot about LS stuff since the Cam Challenge because I've been forced to. But we'll see how it does. You know, I mean, still, obviously, you know, everybody wants to be a winner, but there's going to be a wealth of knowledge. Now, going back to David's statement, he said, I'll be a winner either way. The reason why is because David, whether he wins the challenge or not, he's going to get all the information, the dynos and the cam cards, just like all of us will. And David's finalizing a camshaft program for LSs. Now, this brings up a point. I want you to listen here because LSs are different animals. And I told David this last night. I said, David, did you ever wonder why the cam, the one cam, Texas Speed, was at 229 or something, and it made as much, you know, close, as much as the 241 or 243 cam? He's like, well, yeah, you know, and he rattles off some reasonings. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you what my thought on it was. I think that small camshaft, and I said this back in a video a couple months, or maybe a month ago, driving in my yellow truck. Well, you guys didn't see what color it was. Driving in my truck, I said that small cam to me exposed a velocity issue or a reversion issue. I think that head needs a small cam. The LS heads in general may need smaller intake duration because of they do have very high flow, and you'll notice the exhaust side just is not comparable, which is why they need so much split. They need a lot of exhaust duration because their exhaust ports are not that great compared to some of the stuff we do with the you know, 18 and SB2 and that kind of thing. So compared to their intake, the exhaust is not that great. So I think that small intake duration exposed a flaw, if you will. It's not really a flaw because you're able to compensate for it, but compared to other traditional style heads, it's a different animal. And he goes, well, I never thought of it that way. I think you might be right. So with that information, you know, the cams are turned in, they are what they are. You know, I don't know. We'll see. I think David's numbers are awesome. I think they'll do really well. We'll see for sure. And David was big on, he wanted his 100,000 mile warranty on the Lobes, you know, not tearing up lifters and whatnot. Now, one of the things both of us are concerned with was, I think, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, okay, I think Eric said that they're using a Cadillac style hydraulic roller. So we were confused as to why that's happening. No bad reflection on Eric. It's just like, why would you not use a limited travel? And but you know, everybody has to do it. So we'll see how that lifter handles these different base circles, and if the lifters can stay pumped up. And I know people say, oh, they'll pump up. Well, I'm telling you right now, hydraulic lifters are funny animals. So don't put your paycheck on that, okay? But I think Eric has lots of integrity, and I think he's going to do his very best to make sure everybody's treated fairly. That I will say. So just like me in my last video, accidentally putting a hydraulic lifter in to check cam, to do a cam degree. I mean, that was an accident. It was an oversight. And those things can happen in this test coming up too. So those would, we're all human. As long as we're wrapped in this flesh right here, we're going to say things that didn't come out right or do things that we didn't mean to do. And then some people do things on purpose, and those are the people that ain't worth a darn. But as long as we're wrapped in this flesh, we're going to have these things happen to us. So you have to remember that. So I want to get to my point of the video. I want you guys who are following me to understand something. I have put my wife and my children through hell on earth in my early days to make it. And you say, what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to say this. The people who made it to the top, and I use that term loosely, the people who are very, very successful in life, who just are over the top, overachievers, a lot of those people, if you look at their lives, they neglected everything else but what they were doing. And it's only later in life, when their children are in their 20s and 30s, that they rekindle that relationship. But while the children were small and the wives, and they were freshly married, whatever, a lot of that stuff got neglected so that they could be on top of whatever it is that they were doing. And one need not look very far to see that is exactly true. I was not built that way. I thought, why can I not make it to the top but yet still maintain my family? And that's exactly what I tried to do. So here's my point. Because of that, how did I even get going? Let's start there. So when I started doing the NASCAR modifieds and some truck stuff, and of course a lot of drag racing, some drag racing stuff, and mud pit racing and all that kind of stuff, the customers were running, like in the classes I raced in or built the motors for, you had guys like, there was some Childress motors, there was Ross Yates motors, there were Raymock, there was, Triad, there was PME. If you don't know about Pro Motors out of Charlotte, they're great. Mark Smith used to be, he's passed on now. Mark and I were friends. And by the way, I got all my shop equipment back in the day from Ryan Newman's shop, Penske, and Mark Smith out of Pro Motors. So that's where I got my equipment. They were buying brand new stuff, and their old stuff was like new, and I bought it. And that's how I got started. So I had a shop payment of $1,800 a month just to be in that building. It was 75 by 75. That's not counting power and all the rest. Just the rent was $1,800 a month. And I had this loan for my machine equipment, and I'm trying to make it to the top. I want to be another RCR or somebody like that. So I was in development, and I put all my money, I gave my wife just enough so that we could live, and I took the rest of it, and I started taking risk. And you say, what are we talking about? I'm telling you right now, you got to hear me. If you don't take chances, you're never going to get there. And I'm not saying go out and be foolish. But some shops, some of the small shops, are always like, oh, I wish I could have that opportunity. Well, how do you think I got the opportunity? And this is why I get so defensive and angry, and I will talk to you very closely, okay? Because I put my entire life on the line to get where I got. And that's why I won't have anybody bashing it. My wife and children and my family mean everything to me. And because of the suffering that I will say they went through, I'm going to keep it civil. So how did I do it? I gave motors away. The only way you're going to get someone to say, well, I got a Roush Yates motor, or I got a PME motor, so why would I use your motor? Because I know my motor's as good, and I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to do that for you, and all I want you to do is try it. And by the way, I highly respect all these people, so we're not talking bad about anybody. But this is how I got there. I would build these engines, 220, 230 hours of build time, because anytime you're first assembling an engine with intakes and heads and all this stuff, this is all dry sump stuff, nothing has seen each other before. Guarantee you I had 250 hours. And I used to take one of those little clocks with a timer, and I averaged 200 to 220 hours per build on one of those. Now, once it was refreshed, it wasn't near as long, but the first time it was at least that much. And these engines and parts, I mean, these engines were $43,000, $44,000 out the door. That's carburetor included. And you would have at least $35,000 in parts and labor parts. And then, the rest, you're hoping you can get back in labor and pay your guys and all this. I would give it to them. Listen, just try this. Just try it. I'll even be there to help you put it in. I know maybe you have a different oiling setup or different cooling setup. Just try it. And guys, that's how I got started. If they blew that engine up, I had to eat it. Wasn't on them. If it was awful, I realized they were going to talk trash about me, or not necessarily trash me, but just say, hey, his motors ain't that great. That's a risk I took. And if you want to get out of this small time, you want to get ahead, that's what you got to do. Because if they're running, if you're in drag racing, let's say, and they're running Pat Musey or Charlie Buck or whoever, and you want to be right there, you got to go over there and give them a motor and say, try it. Just try it. That's the only way you're going to do it. You're not going to get it being on YouTube. You'll get some things. I've been getting a lot of calls about stuff, and I told Eric, I'm like, dude, I'm not really looking for business, man. I've already done my thing, and I'm doing about 15 engines a year now. They're very handpicked. I have some NASCAR guys coming to me, getting engines for their stuff, especially the Grand National Series, stuff like that. But I get to handpick and choose my customers now, and I earned that. I earned it. I would, talking about the family, I would work till 5 o'clock or so, and we would all sit down and eat together, and we would talk about school, and we would talk about whatever, and try to be the best father I could, try to be the best husband I could. And by 11 o'clock, when everybody was in the bed, I got back in my car and went back to work till 2 or 3 in the morning. And it almost makes me want to tear up talking about it, because I would then come home at 2 or 3 in the morning and make sure everybody was okay. And one night, after years and years of doing this, I had a blood clot. It went right to my heart, and the pain, I cannot even begin to tell you how bad it hurt. And I didn't want to wake my wife up. I didn't want to scare anybody, so I got in the car and I drove myself to the emergency room. And I went in there and said, I'm having chest pains. And they're like, oh my gosh. So they throw me in a wheelchair, take me straight back, and sure enough, my heart wasn't getting any blood. And they immediately called my wife, and she dragged the kids out of bed and rushed up there. And this is like 4 in the morning by now. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, well, I was just, I don't know, embarrassed. I was hoping it was nothing. But the pain was excruciating. And the doc, after we had to do a cath and go up there and find it and then fix it and get my heart under control, and everything was cool. And he's like, I'm going to tell you something, son. If you don't change your life, you're not going to be here. I'm like, yes, sir, yes, sir. So I go home and I chill out for like 3 days, and I'm right back at work. And the very next year, within a year, it done it again, if my times are right. And it done some damage. I struggle. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm seeing, and I know what I'm saying, but there are times where I just won't, it's like I have to struggle to think about it. And it's only when like I found it to be when I'm making a video. It's like I'm trying to make a video without stopping the camera, and I'm worried about the time. And but when I'm by myself working, or I got some people around me, we always make papers, and nothing gets missed. Now, in fact, probably nowadays, I am more conscious of quality control than ever before. So in that aspect, some good has come out of it. But after the second time, my wife was like, we can't live this way. You know, you cannot, I don't want to see you dead in the shop floor one day. So that is what it takes to be on top when you're starting from the very bottom like I did. I had nothing. I was out of the service, working third shift as a tool and die maker, and I got out of work at 7:30 in the morning on third shift, and would go to college and stay in class till 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then try and sleep, and then go back and be at work by 11 p.m. All because this was my goal, was to be a professional race engine builder. And so, yeah, I paid my dues, guys. If you think just being in business is paying your dues, you have no clue what I'm talking about. None. And then losing everything in storms, and I mean literally everything, as you'll see in the photos here. It takes a lot of resilience to get back on the horse after you've been knocked off 3 or 4 times. I mean knocked off hard. I thank the Lord above, because I know that's who brought me through it, and He allowed me to have great people in my life. My parents, my wife, and my sons are awesome, and my sister, my brother, everybody's just fantastic. Good friends, great church community. All those things brought me through that, because there are people who don't come back from stuff like that. So if I seem testy at times, just know that I'm a fighter. In fact, I actually was an amateur fighter. I loved it. From 1988 till probably 97 or 8, I used to do a lot of amateur fights, MMA type stuff. It's just my nature. If I get backed in the corner, I'm coming out swinging. And I just can't lay down and die. I'm not made that way. And if there's a competition, I want to win it. Don't mean that I will, it just means I'm going to try. And if I can't figure it out at first, I will have it figured out by the second or third try. Now, I said all that to say this. If you want to make it big, you got to step out there and put your name out there, and you got to be willing to take risk. Don't be foolish about your risk. I mean, you know, but you may have to give an engine away to really get up there. And if your engine is not as good, don't lay down and die. Figure out why not and make it better. And this is why I chuckle at some of the stuff I hear, because, for example, I said in my video about the rocker arms that I was one at the very end. I said, here's a little tech tip for you on a hydraulic roller. And here's what people don't hear. They don't hear the little words in between. I said, if you're in a situation where you're trying to make all you can, and you have to run a hydraulic, you have to throw some rocker arm to it. And then, you know, people may tell you that's not the thing to do, but I'm telling you it is. How much dyno time have they done? How much? Has anybody tried it? I've tried it. You will not see a cup engine, and you know how good they are, with less than a 1.7 rocker. Now, granted, there might be some one-offs here and there, but majority of the time, you're going to see some higher rocker ratios. What is a high rocker ratio? What is that? If a stock rocker arm on so many engines is 1.7, that's going to fall. Then what is high rocker? What is a long rod? What's a long connecting rod? Well, long rods are better. Well, what's long? A Chevy 283 has a 5.7 rod. What's the crank to rod ratio on that? Like, I don't know, 1.9 or somewhere in there. It's a 5.7 rod. It's not a long rod. The piston's still that tall. You see what I mean? It's all about perspective. So I don't have a full race engine that's less than 1.7. No way. I will run the most aggressive lobe that CompCam has, or whoever, because I run multiple different name brands. I mean, one of the most aggressive lobes that you can physically make. And I realize what they're used for. So understand this. The more aggressive the lobe is, the more aggressive the valve train is, I start limiting my RPM capability. If I've got a RPM capability limit, meaning, okay, I can't turn at 7,000 RPMs because there's a rule, or whatever the case may be, boy, that's when the aggression starts. Because I know that I can make the most aggressive lobe on the planet RPM to 8,500 and not break anything. But I also know that my limit, when it starts nosing over because my valve train is now starting to get out of control, that maybe 8,400 is all. So if I've got a long straightaway, then I'm not going to run the most aggressive lobe I can find. I'm going to calm it down. But if I've got to have this thing being all it can be, and I know my RPM, and I'm going to back it down even a little further. I know that this thing will constantly, at every straightaway, turn at least 8,200. I'm going to put the aggressiveness to that because I know how to do it. Now, how fair is it to me to have paid my dues and costed myself thousands of dollars by breaking stuff and figuring out how to make something live? How fair is it to me to give that out to the world? Especially when I'm still doing race engines. That's not fair to me. I earned that. And the only way you're going to earn it is to go do it and put it on the dyno and check it and break stuff. And when you break stuff, you're going to learn. If you call somebody who sits behind a desk and says, well, I want to do this, and they're going to give you some advice, and you follow that, how much experience do they have? I'm telling you right now, I have found out that people working at these companies are just people working at these companies. They are not being in that dyno room or at the test track. One of my good friends at CompCams, his name is James Fry, and by the way, Jay Adams is top notch too. But I remember James Fry telling me this, I'll never forget it. When I was doing the land speed stuff, I was doing a 250 cubic inch motor. Like I said in my other videos, I hand built the heads. I was talking to David about it last night. I still have the motor, and it was in the Hurricane. And you wouldn't believe what it looks like. It's just heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, it just kills me. But I'm going to try and clean it up, and we're going to talk about it. David and I want to do a video. He wants to do a video on the motor. So I said, okay. I have the actual engine. But James Fry says to me, Salter, you know what they say about pioneers? I said, no, what? He says they get a lot of arrows in, well, he said the word ASS. And I said, yeah, you're right. And buddy, let me tell you, I was going through it during those years because I was trying to make a name for myself. And we did. And we did. We set over 20 records. And that little 250 cubic inch Chevrolet with one carburetor on gasoline dynoed at 544. And that's well over 2 horsepower per cubic inch. And I think that the first time we tested everything, the torque was around 380. And then after I did some intake work in the plenum, I got the torque up right up to 400. But that's 250 cubic inches. Now, I want you to think about how in the world did I get any compression out of it? Well, I got it because I started with a cylinder head that had no chamber. The biggest I could get in the valve was 202 and have any flow. I couldn't just stuff a ginormous valve in it. I had to cut the top of the deck to get the 202 in and still have an exhaust port because I had to have room to have a decent exhaust. And I can show you all that. But I rolled the edges of the, hey, guys, these are some secrets to some, not secrets to others. But the time involved was hours and hours and hours. And some things we did didn't make a difference. And some things we did helped a lot. And some things we did hurt. So you're never going to get nowhere unless you step out there and stick your neck out there and put your name on the line. And you may have to give some stuff away to get people to appreciate the product that you're making. And understand this, there is a difference between an open engine and a restricted engine. A restricted engine has way more velocity than, generally speaking, than a big open large cubic inch drag engine. That restricted engine needs a very fast valve train. And a lot of times we use very high rocker ratios for restricted applications. And what's my personal feelings? I like to use cam lobe as much as possible. But there are times where the rocker arm is the answer. And so that's the point here. You cannot take top fuel NHRA or 5,000 horsepower supercharged or whatever and apply it to a 2-barrel circle track motor. The thinking in some areas is exactly the same, and in other areas it's on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And I've had the privilege and honor to be a part of that, because it is a privilege and it is an honor. It's not that I'm better than anybody, it's that I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. I started being trained by some top-notch people when I was 14 years old. And that is just right place, right time, thank you, Lord. But then I took what they taught me and I furthered it because I wasn't scared to take a risk. Oh, I was scared, but I did it anyways. And the stuff that did not work helped me develop the stuff that does. And you saw, like yesterday, I even forgot to transpose my numbers on the degree wheel, which it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why it doesn't matter. Because it's a comparison. I did both tests exactly the same, 1.5 and 1.6 tests on the degree wheel. They're both the same, but you're supposed to transpose. Now, my other degree wheel, the silver one, the Precision Products, it always had the double sets of numbers on it. But for beautification reasons, I put my slider on the comp wheel because it's not all corroded and saltwater damaged, and it does not have both sets of wheels. So if I have any complaint about the comp degree wheel, it's only got one set of numbers, and I like the dual set of numbers. But anyways, neither here nor there. So remember, the faster you make your valve action, the more you're going to limit your RPMs. And that's not to say you can't turn a very fast valve at 8,500 RPMs, because I do it all the time, I'm talking about if you're trying to exceed past 8,500, you're starting to limit that with these very aggressive lobes and high rocker ratios. And the reason about the high rocker ratios that I wanted to point that out was they're never what they say they are. They're usually more, and I did not want you to make the mistake that just says, well, if I add a 1.6 rocker to this lobe, then that means I'm going to have this much lift, and so I should be fine. I should have about 20 thousandths to spare. No, in reality, you're not going to be fine if you only have 20 thousandths to spare. You're going to hit the thing because they're usually sometimes 20, 30 thousandths more lift than what they advertise. And some of them aren't. It's a quality control thing. It's a production thing. I don't know. I don't make rock arms. But I do test them, and that is a fact. And I showed it to you in the video about the rock arms. So, I'm a human being, and I do make some mistakes quite frequently. But there's a lot of years here, guys. A lot of years here. I don't know everything, but I know people who know about everything. So if I don't have the answer, I will find it for you. Now, I'm going to pause the video. Oh, some of you are probably wondering what I'm doing. This was the car we got my oldest son. It's a 79 Mustang. And this is a 331. It's a 302 Ford. It's a 331 now. I built it back in 2017. And it makes 582 at the crank. It's a 18-degree forward head, so it's not, any changed angles or anything. Nothing crazy. The compression is 9.6 to 1. We run it on 93 octane pump gas. It makes 582. And yeah, she's so much fun. It's got a solid roller cam in it, so it sounds awesome. And I'll probably do a video of me driving it here soon. Like I said, we've been just all kinds of stuff going on. But anyways, I'm going to pause the video